are other questions that our voting members might have about.
Now, I would say that the focus for tomorrow is not about Ger Tzedek. Right? Ger Tzedek.
Can you either repeat the question or ask the question?
Oh, okay. So he asked, are we going to talk about Ger Tzedek tomorrow? And why, why would somebody want to be a Ger Tzedek rather than a Ger Toshav? Right, that kind of thing. So I'm saying tomorrow's focus is not about Ger Tzedek. If we've redefined, see, if we see that the definition, how do you say this? The meaning of the ground rules that any one of us sets up for a person becoming a Ger Tzedek is not about do we want to make it easy or hard. Right? It's about how do we look at our Judaism and what makes each of us comfortable. And there's a lot of latitude in there, and we could talk about that some other time. Right? But in this case, I'm much more focused on, see, Reb Zalman was concerned about, since we only had two options, right? You're either a Ger Tzedek or you're a Goy, right? There's no other option. So then, if that's true, then you have this argument that develops over what's a Ger Tzedek. How do you, and are we, what happens when people come to us whom we know are not going to be the kind of Jews we would like to see them be? Whatever, right? Now, do we say in that situation it's better to go ahead and do the conversion, like the Tosafot suggests in some cases, or do we refuse? But that's a different question. If we have an option of a fully welcomed Ger Toshav, then we don't need to. Then we don't need to worry about that. If somebody says, "Look, I love this person. I want to spend my life with this person. I love this community that this person is a part of," or like people we know very well who are very close to our community here, but who are not, don't make the plunge. They don't. It's not their spiritual practice, but there's something about it that's attractive to them, right? Then we can do that. See, Reb Zalman suggested the possibility of doing conversions that are just within one community. Right? Functionally, what I think he was really offering was the Ger Toshav concept, right? Except if we do the Ger Toshav concept in a wider focus, then we don't have to do it community by community. We can have a sense that there is this thing called the Ger Toshav. And again, listen, I wrote a long time ago for the Reconstructionists, we have to be very careful about the notion that rabbis decide what Judaism is. Right? The rabbis decide what Judaism is. Right? We actually rarely do, right? We most of the time keep an eye on what people are doing, and we try to decide, do we want to resist it, do we want to adjust it, or do we want to accept it? Right? And that's what we really do most of the time. So again, I'm saying it again. I'm not suggesting something that you don't know about, because most of us do know about this already, but I'm trying to give it a context, right? So that we can talk about it in a really, in an authentic, in Lashon Limudim, right? As Reb Zalman put it. Yeah.
Jen, so you're discussing, you're describing a process that's different about coming in. But once you're in, you perceive a difference in how a person would be received, act in that nature. Like you asked Ger Toshav, are you Jewish? He said, yes. Yes, you're Tzedek, are you Jewish? Yes. Are there things that they could do that would be different? Would one not be able to call for the Torah?
That's my question.
What would be some of the practical differences depending on what you are?
The people who share that Dropbox folder with me, as I said, know how many times they've gotten notices about this file being changed. I had a draft of this that lasted the full hour, and that wasn't acceptable to me. So the answer is, we will work on that, right? What does it actually mean, right? How do we, instead of just pretending, doing a Jewish ceremony when we know one person isn't Jewish, how do we really authenticate that person's being? Reb Zalman had some ideas, which I'll share tomorrow. They come out of his sense of what's a given. I mean, I'll give you one example. He said, well, we could give a Ger Toshav a Hosafa on Shabbat morning. After we've done all 7 required aliyot, when I have Hosafa, we can give it to a Ger Toshav. How many of us do 7 aliyot on Shabbat? And if we do 7 aliyot on Shabbat, who wants to do an 8? So the idea is a good idea, right? What does it mean, and where are the limits? I don't know the answer to that. That's what I want to work out all together. Okay, does that work? Now I saw Ora before that.
an open-ended question. One of the questions that hearing this raises for me is I start to imagine the future, say 500 years from now. And I'm wondering, how does this play out? Because the questions that I hear us raising pertain to this generation. And I'm just trying to envision, what are the implications many, many generations from now? Are there different categories? Like, is this the future, Kohanim and Leviim and Israelim being developed? Or that's what I'm
Yeah, it's an interesting, question. I mean, 500 years is more than 7 generations. So, I don't really know. I mean, the only thing I can say is that if the future that's calling us, right, is a future that says we are the heirs of a wonderful householder spiritual practice, and everyone who is attracted to that as their spiritual practice, we welcome them as Ger Tzedek. For the people who like to, who want to be close, but don't want this to be their exclusive spiritual practice, then we'll have another place, right, which authenticates who they are. Right? Could even authenticate a place that a Jew might want to walk out as far as, I don't know. But I think the idea of trying to model a powerful spiritual practice, which is actually householder and family based, right, is, I think, to model that in a way which makes it as accessible as possible and welcomes people, right, instead of excluding people, welcomes people, right, you know what I'm saying, as they are. I think that's the best gamble we can make. I mean, I don't know better than that at the moment. Let's see, I just want to see let's go to Sarah, we'll go to that side for a minute.
My concern with bringing the Rambam here today is that he was very open because people were coming into a halachic community. When you were accepted as a convert, you automatically observed Shabbat and Kashrut because there was no other option. And I think that for me, I understand this may not exactly be what you're talking about, but the core issue that just for me differentiates the Ger Toshav from the Ger Tzedek is that concept of being mitzvah and how we as rabbis work with our congregants on that idea of what does it mean to do all Kabbalah all mitzvot. And I think that somehow working with that in a very overt way really makes a huge difference in this. And,
But you see, if you ask that question and we want to be honest about it, right, then what does it mean? Yes, the community that the Rambam was a dayan for had a certain kind of practice that was a given, but ours doesn't. Right? We don't have that. Right? What?
That's not certain.
It's not certain. That he was a dayan, or that?
No, that there was a uniform practice.
Oh, good. Well, that makes it even easier. Thanks. So, I think that so that's got to be our question then too. What is it? But I do want to say that in the Orthodox rabbinate right now, there's a huge struggle that's been going on for a couple of generations now. What does Kabbalat Ol Mitzvot mean? Right? Does Kabbalat Ol Mitzvot mean this mitzvah, that mitzvah, that mitzvah, and that mitzvah, until you get to 613 with all the rest of them, the derivatives? Or does it mean accepting the principle that there is something called mitzvot? Right? And I'll tell you that Ben Zion Uziel, who's the first Sephardic chief rabbi of Israel, Palestine, said, if we made it a requirement that everybody had to observe all the mitzvot as we understand it, we'd never convert anybody. Because who has the time to watch these people? But that's the kind of thing that's being proposed now in certain ways. So, I think it's important to recognize, and I also want to say, again and again, I want to reiterate, a halachic community does not mean people who take a list of mitzvot and follow them. I mean, that's what's been going on. As Art Green has always said, that started when Shmirat Shabbat Kehilchata got written. And all of a sudden, all these Orthodox people who used to know what Shabbos was didn't know what it was anymore and had to do it by the book all the time, right? And that there was a certain set standard. In fact, when we lived with Reb Zalman years ago, there was a couple who came by, they were just escaping from Chabad. But one of the things that would happen is that people would literally walk into their bedroom to see if they had a double bed or twin beds, and how far apart were they at any given moment. Because it becomes the list. So if halacha is defined as a list, then we have a problem, and that's why we want to say we're not halachic. But if halacha is a process by which we figure things out, then we're in a different space. And so I would really like to encourage that. Now I'm going to say that I think given the time, I'm going to let one more person, and then we'll just have to find other ways to continue this. So go ahead. You're going to yield to somebody else?
Yes,
To whom? To Lori? To whom?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
I am a brother, it's great. So this is very, very important work, and I actually really, really appreciate what you're doing. And I think the Halacha does get into cases when we're in a space like this. I have been of the opinion, actually, and this might be kind of an interesting thing, that we need sort of two categories, and I'm not sure about this. I just kind of want to put it out there. So, not to mention names, but I know a synagogue where we have a guy who's a UU minister who comes and plays the drums every single Shabbat, and he is awesome. We love him. And we actually kind of decided that he was a Ger Toshav. And because he is such an important part of our worship, he's a teacher. I think so many people have gotten closer to Judaism and closer really to Jewish renewal through his work. But he isn't Jewish at all. And so that's one model. And then I've got people who, let's say there's maybe an interfaith family, for example, an interfaith marriage, where poor old grandmother Mary Catherine is going to die if the spouse converts to Judaism. And out of respect to the poor old grandmother, they're not doing the conversion, but that's like literally the only thing preventing them. So you have somebody who's really living the Jewish life, living the Jewish mitzvot, isn't Jewish, isn't going to be Jewish, at least, for now. So I'm not arguing that they're a Jew. But I think those are almost two different sorts of ways to be on this spectrum without being at either end of it. I just want to put that out there.
Yeah, thank you. I'll slide out of that by saying, of course halacha, of course the halachic process deals with specifics, because that's what it is. How, the story, right? I didn't go to this Rebbe to learn Gemara with. I went to the Rebbe to see how he ties his shoelaces. Well, what does that mean? I mean, to me it means this guy knew how to tie his shoelaces in such a way that you could see Sinai and Mashiach when he did that. Right? He brought that kind of awareness to that detail. Well, this is why we care about details. We care about them. But how we relate to each one is a specific, right? And one of the big issues, I say this to all my students, and I learned it from David Hartman, who said, you want to be very careful about asking for psak. Once you ask for a psak, that psak is there.
What's
Right?
psak?
A psak means a decision. Tell me what to do. So if the rabbi answers that in writing, that becomes something, yes, this is the way it should be done. If you get it done that way, it becomes an obstacle, right, in the end. So you want to be careful. He was really into consultation. Ask the rabbi to sit with you and talk about it, and then go make your own decision, you see. So you have to be very careful about that, right? And that's why I say to my students always, don't generalize. Right? It's my problem with the way the conservative and the reform movement write responsa, because they tend to write position papers. The position papers are very good, and they're well researched, and they're convincing in many cases. However, they're still written in the sort of global sense, rather than this person asked this question in this situation, and in this one I answer as follows. Some of this is more detailed in the actual book, but I'll give you. I'm running over, so should I stop in the middle of my speech?
No. At the end of the thought.
Okay, I'll stop at the end of the thought and add a quote. Okay, so there's one tshuva that I read where, it's about a conversion ultimatum, right? The woman had fallen in love with, the Jewish woman had fallen in love with a non-Jewish guy. They had a baby, the baby died. She still loved this guy, so she said to her father, you get my guy converted, or else I'm going to become either a Christian or I'm going to commit suicide. The rabbi wasn't all that excited about responding to that, and he wrote to his rabbi, who said, I think you're right. I think in this case, she could marry somebody else. There's lots of Jews she could marry, and it's not our responsibility, how she decides to follow it up. However, he says, every rabbi is going to have to make up his own mind in every place. That was a very interesting way to close that. Right? So, okay. I'm going to try something to just close off. I don't know if it'll work because I don't know if I can sing, but I'm going to try. Eloheinu sheba shamayim rei b'tocha kasha Eloheinu sheba shamayim she'et Shabbateinu shit shalom beineinu shit shalom beineinu shit shalva be'armenoteinu Eloheinu sheba shamayim ten shalom ba'aretz ten sava ba'olam ten shalom ten shalom b'malchuyot.
Daniel, that was awesome, taking us from the general context to the particular and inviting us to participate in the future of that question. We'll reconvene at 10:30. Outside of the room, you do whatever you want. Inside the room,